Hello and welcome you all in the webinar uh, about the GST refund issues for both goods and services. And we are also going to uh, talk about the timelines for refund with respect to the GST aspects. The session is actually developed after doing a lot of research on this topic of GST refund, which has got into more and more complexities as and when the clarifications have arrived. Uh, if you look at the GST notifications and circulars with respect to export refunds only, you will find at least 12 or 14 of them which are becoming very, very critical over a period of time. Apart from that, of course, there are sections in the law and rules and forms and so on. So, a lot of clutter has happened over a period of time from July 2017 till now. And the best part is we have been through the entire cycle from implementation to actual, doing the compliance for the customers and, submitting the required claims and also representing the customers at various levels for claiming their refunds and handling the queries with respect to issues in the refund calculations and so on. In this process, we have tried to create the compilation of all these circulars and notifications which have come at different point in time, keeping all the different facts and issues which have cropped up from time to time in our mind while designing this presentation. And we have, Harshit here, who is kind of working in and out with the representation side of the GST and has, been handled by, of course, our senior partner, CA Pranav Bhai Kapadia. He's actually worked together with Harshit to develop this chronology of circulars, notifications, and sections, of course, and rules and forms and so on as to how to take care of different types of refunds of different industries in different time frame and so on. So we have tried to kind of unlock this myth of issues which are there in this session. So it will be very, very interesting and enlightening for all companies who have either been claiming their refunds successfully or have some issues with respect to refunds or are struggling with some formality here and there to overcome the issues with respect to the refund. I would request all the participants to give this session a patient hearing, and at the same time feel free to write to us on the chat box. There is something called as Q&A, that is question and answer block in the Zoom app, both in mobile as well as in the laptops. You can see at the bottom in the laptop, and in the mobile you have to just touch your screen where you are able to see my video to see the Q&A popping up, and just click on that, and you can write the questions to Harshit or Pranav bhai as and when they come in your mind. We will pick up these questions during the session as well as at the end of the session, depending on the relevance and uh, requirement. But we'll definitely answer all the questions to the best of our knowledge and help you understand the intricacies of this law and try to clear your doubts. So please be with us till the end of the session. Harshit is also a chartered accountant and expert in representation and has been with us since last at least 3 years now, and has handled a lot of refund matters, and with sheer passion to tell what he has done and how he has solved certain issues. He has come all along and developed this presentation. So over to you, Harshit.
Thank you, Mitesh sir. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants here, around 40 now. Thank you for coming here for the presentation. So, the topic for today, as elaborated by Mitesh sir, is GST refund in case of export of goods and services. The various things that will be covered in this particular presentation will be the GST provisions and issues relating to claiming refund on export of goods and services from India, time limit for claiming the refund, and the procedure for claiming the refund on account of exports. So the first, heading towards the provisions, we will go through the basic provision of export of goods and export of services first. The export of goods basically means taking goods out of India to a place outside India. So it is very simple. Goods have to go out of India, and if the goods are going out of India from a place in India, it is export of goods. However, when it comes to export of services, since services being intangible in nature and no physical presence can be seen, the definition is little more complicated. The export of services means uh, when the supply of service, when the supplier is located in India, the recipient of service is located outside India. The place of service to be determined as per section 12 and 13 of the IGST Act is outside India. Payment for such services has to be received by the supplier in convertible foreign exchange only. In some cases, the if GST department has issued circular in Indian rupees also it is allowed, but it is very rare. Mostly it has to be received in convertible foreign exchange. And the supplier and the recipient should not be mere establishment of distinct persons. They should not be branches of one company in India and outside India. So these are the 5 criteria. If these 5 criteria are fulfilled, then that particular supply of service will be considered as export of services. Heading towards the zero rated supply, which is a concept which includes export of goods and services and supply of goods and services to SEZ. So this is a bigger basket, zero rated supply, including exports as well as supplies to SEZ. And refund is eligible when you uh, make zero rated supplies. And there are 2 options at the outset: under bond and LUT without payment of IGST, or without bond, that is on payment of IGST. So there are 2 ways of claiming the refund in case of zero rated supplies: under bond and under by payment of IGST. Now the term refund, as per section 54 and the other provisions and rules, basically includes refund of output tax paid on zero rated supplies, that is when export or supply to SEZ is made with payment of IGST. Refund of tax paid on input and input services in making such zero rated supplies, that is in case it is made under LUT, then whatever ITC has been accumulated by paying taxes on input and input services only, no capital goods, then you can claim refund of that ITC. Also, refund on account of deemed export is included, and refund of unutilized ITC as per section 54(3), that is on refund of export and even inverted duty. So this is the refund. These are few uh, definitions or few parts that are included, that is included within the definition of refund. It is an inclusive definition. The section 54, refund of unutilized credit on account of zero rated supply and inverted structure. Refund shall not be allowed in case of capital goods subject to export duty, wherein duty drawback is claimed on GST amount paid. That is, if export duty is to be paid on the export of goods, or if duty drawback has been claimed of the GST portion of while exporting the goods, then refund is not allowed. It has been specifically mentioned. So duty drawback is allowed. Duty drawback of customs duty is allowed. Duty drawback of the GST amount is not allowed. Means if you take it, then refund under GST Act is not allowed. And similarly, if the goods are subjected to export duty, refund cannot be claimed of the ITC. So the refund scenario in case of the zero rated supply has been broadly discussed in this slide. Like it will export of goods, export of services, and supply to SEZ and SEZ units and developers, that is supply of both goods and services. So all these services can be made with payment of tax and without payment of tax. So the things that have to be considered while making a particular supply with or without payment of tax can be identified from this slide. So the only exception is export of goods with payment of tax, wherein shipping bill is deemed to be the refund application, and refund is automatically credited to the bank's dealer's bank account, provided certain criteria are met, for which no specific different refund application is required. However, in case of export of services with or without payment and supply to SEZ with or without payment of IGST, refund application has to be made under Inform RFD 01 under Rule 89. And export of goods also, if it is done under LUT without payment of tax, different refund application specifically has to be made from the GST portal. The easier is only export of goods with payment of tax, wherein you can get the refund directly. Moving ahead, first I will discuss the export of goods with payment of tax provisions and how the refund is processed. So first, the exporter will file the shipping bill with the customs authorities. And while filing the shipping bill at the time of export, it has to be specifically mentioned that that particular export is being made with payment of IGST and without LUT. So payment, the amount of IGST paid is also reflected on the shipping bill. This is the amount of IGST that has to be paid for this particular export. Export general manifest is to be filed by the customs shipping authority after the export has commenced. Means commenced means the shipping ship has gone out of the territorial waters of India, or by road if it has crossed the customs frontier of India. All these things are done, then export general manifest is to be filed, wherein shipping bill details, container details, invoice details all are mentioned. So this is the customs part of the process. Then while filing the GST returns for that particular month, first GSTR1 is to be filed. In the table 6A, all the details, export invoices, export invoice number, export invoice date, shipping bill number, shipping bill date, all the values have to be mentioned as they were mentioned in the shipping bill. This is a very important matter. One should be very careful while filing GSTR1, because the details as mentioned in the shipping bill and as mentioned in the GSTR1 return need to match exactly. Otherwise, this smooth flow of refund process will be halted, and there will be some other either issue. You will not get the refund, and other physical mediums or amendment in the later GST returns will have to be done to get the refund, which will just delay it, which no one wants. Once GSTR1 is filed, while filing GSTR3B, the amount of IGST that is reflected as payable in the shipping bill has to be paid by mentioning such amount in the table 3.1.b of the GSTR3B returns. Also, mistakes are made at this point of time, wherein instead of mentioning it in 3.1.b, which is specifically for the zero rated supplies, the tax amount is mentioned in 3.1.a, which is for local supplies, and the tax is paid, and because of that refund is stuck. So while filing 1 and 3b, utmost care has to be taken that shipping bill details and GSTR 1 and 3b details are matching. Once this returns are filed, the details are then validated by the GST portal and sent to the IceGate portal. This can be viewed under the refund track status of track transfer of invoices to IceGate category under the on the GST portal. For every month, you can see a table over there. It has been mentioned that these many invoices have been transferred, these many invoices have not been transferred. For whatever the case may be, there can be any error, like value is not matching, invoice number is not matching, shipping bill is not matching. So if this is an error, the GST portal itself will tell you that the invoices have not been transmitted. Mail also comes to the registered email ID that these invoices have not been transmitted. After going on the portal, you can check why they were not transferred and amend the GSTR1 accordingly. Once all this process is done, the matching is done, amount of IGST is directly deposited in the exporter registered bank account. Certain processes are done by the customs on their backend, but the dealer has to do, taxpayer has to do nothing. If everything is correct, refund automatically comes into the bank account. One thing that has to be noted in this particular type of refund, that is export of goods with payment of tax, the payment that has to be made in the GSTR 3B can be made by utilizing input tax credit available on input services and capital goods. Earlier we saw that only input and input unutilized ITC refund of input and input service only can be taken. But while utilizing this ITC for making export of goods with payment of tax, even ITC available on capital goods can be utilized, thereby indirectly claiming refund of GST paid on capital goods. So this is the most beneficial part of this particular type of refund, which is not there in other types of refund. No other type of SEZ, inverted duty or whatever capital goods ITC cannot be refunded. Only in this particular category it is allowed. So it is the highlight of this category. Next, we will see zero rated supplies without payment of tax. This is a basic example. Like a particular taxpayer has incurred various expenses of raw material, labor charges, plant and machinery, and has paid GST on them, and correspondingly has made sales as well. Of domestic supply sales are there, export without payment sale is there, and SEZ sale is there. So local sales on payment of tax, export without payment of tax under LUT, and SEZ supplies without payment of tax under LUT. So what will be the refund scenario and how refund has to be calculated, we will see. So the most important rule for export for zero rated supplies under LUT is Rule 89.4. The formula given under Rule 89.4 is very simple as such, but the intricacies involved in the small portion of the formulas are noteworthy. So the formula is turnover of zero rated supply of goods and services divided by total adjusted turnover into net ITC. So there are only three elements in this formula, actually four: turnover of zero rated supply of goods plus turnover of zero rated supply of services. So whole divided by total adjusted turnover into net ITC. So now we will go into the deeper meaning of this particular terms. Turnover of zero rated supply of goods. So what does this mean? This specifically means value of zero rated supply of goods which were made during the relevant period, which may be a month, quarter, Maibansi, whatever, even whole year, under bond or LUT. So zero rated supply is made under bond or LUT, or the value which is 1.5 times the value as declared by the supplier of like goods domestically by the same or similarly placed supplier, whichever is less. So basically here what is to be done, since particular good is sold in local market for rupees 100, but it is exported at rupees 200. So it is exported double or triple, even 300 rupees. So when this is done, the value of export increases. That is why the net ITC eligible for refund also increases. And that is how the government has ended up paying a lot of refund to the taxpayers. And in order to counter this specific rule, this specific amendment has been made recently, since 1st April 2020 it is effective, that the amount of turnover of zero rated supply of goods will be restricted to 1.5 times the value of similar goods sold local, supplied locally by a similarly or same supplier. It does not include the turnover in respect of which refund has been claimed under section under Rule 4A and 4B of Rule 89. 4A and 4B specifically mean deemed exports and refund claimed by a merchant exporter. So in the export turnover related to these export has to be excluded while calculating the turnover zero rated supply of goods. Moving ahead, turnover of zero rated supply of services. The value of zero rated supply of services, the calculation of this value is also not so easy. Three factors are to be considered. Three factors specifically have been mentioned over here. Aggregate of the payments received during the relevant period of zero rated supply of services. So aggregate payment receipts. We have whatever foreign exchange has been received in respect of services, in respect of services has to be considered. Whether that service has been provided or has not been provided, we will see that afterwards. But all the amount received during the that particular period of 1 month, 1 quarter, whatever it is, amount received in the bank in convertible foreign exchange is the starting point. Then we have to add zero rated supply of services where supply has been completed, for which payment has been received in advance in any prior period. So when payment has been received in the prior period, it has not been received during this period, but the supply has been completed in this period. Supply has been completed, meaning has been completed, and all the services have been provided. So the invoice has been raised. So when these things happen, supply gets basically completed. So the amount is not received, but the supply has got completed in this particular quarter, so or month tax period. The amount has to be included in turnover of zero rated supply of services. And minus, this is important, minus advances received for zero rated supply of services for which supply of service has not been completed. So whatever amount of zero rate foreign exchange you had received during the particular tax period, in respect of which services have not been completely rendered till date, has to be reduced. So one can see over here that a person can apply for GST refund in case of turnover of zero rated supply of services only when the invoice has been raised, the supply has been completed, and the amount also has been received. This is not a criteria in case of goods. In case of goods, only supply has to be made, amount need not be received. But in case of supply of services, it is important that the amount of foreign exchange has also been received. Only then you can file a refund application, because only then that amount will be included in this particular formula for the calculation of refund. So this is an important part, which is the different in goods and services. In services, amount of foreign exchange has to be received before. Then turnover, the total adjusted turnover is basically the total turnover, total turnover in a state or union territory, which includes all taxable supplies, exempt supplies, zero rated supplies, everything, minus exempt supplies and minus turnover of deemed export. So adjusted total turnover is total turnover in that state or union territory minus the exempt supplies, nil rated supplies, and the deemed export. So adjusted turnover, that is adjusted, it is not exactly total, it is little less than the total. Net ITC basically means ITC on input and input services, not on capital goods. And the recent circulars that have been come, it has been mentioned that ITC that is being reflected in GSTR 2A only has to be considered for this net ITC for calculation of net ITC and corresponding subsequent calculation of refund. So this is an issue if it is not being reflected in 2A while at the time of filing of refund. It has to be not included in the refund calculation, and one is not even supposed to get refund of that. So that is also an issue. Means at the time of filing it was not available in 2A, but after 1 month, 2 months, it became available in 2A. So that becomes an issue. So one should see that what amount of credit is available in 2A, only then go for the refund application. As of now, these are the provisions, and all the circulars also have been. I have mentioned all the parts of the circular which are important. Which is the 2A part is mentioned in the circular. It is nowhere mentioned in the rule. So moving ahead, the export of goods and the calculation of 1.5 times of domestically sold goods. I have enumerated the same by way of an example. So a supplier exports 10,000 units of a particular product at rupees 200 each, and the supplier is selling same product in Indian market at 140 rupees. So here we can see the export is at a higher charge. So the export turnover that has to be considered for calculation of refund under Rule 89.4 will be rupees 200 or rupees 140 into 1.5 times, that is rupees 210, whichever is lower. So in this case, since 1.5 times becomes 210 and lower is 200, we are able to claim a refund in respect of the whole export turnover. However, in the next example, if you can see, the supplier is exporting goods at rupees 200 and is selling in the Indian market at rupees 120. So 1.5 times of rupees 120 is rupees 180. So instead of 200, now we have to consider rupees 180 only for calculation of refund. Kindly note that only for the calculation of refund, 180 rupees 180 is to be considered, while filing returns and while raising the invoice and all those things, 200 is to be considered. Only for refund purposes, the value will be considered as rupees 180 and calculation will be done accordingly. Further, it must be noted that this 1.5 times threshold is applicable only in case of refund under LUT and not in case of export with payment of IGST. So that is another advantage of the export with payment of IGST, that this particular threshold is not applicable, and even capital goods ITC can be utilized for making that particular export. So there is a dual advantage of exporting goods with payment of tax, but there is a limitation also that so much of ITC should be available. If it is not available, then you have to pay in cash. So that is not anyways, no one wants to pay in cash, and it is not feasible also to pay in cash first and then get the refund. So that is the main advantage of LUT, that there is no cash outflow on day one while filing the return basically, but the accumulated ITC can be claimed as refund later on. So here I have done the calculation of the earlier example that we had seen. The export turnover considered in the below formula should be after taking into consideration the 1.5 times of the domestic value. Here it is been assumed that it is within the 1.5 times range. So for the exporter, for refund on account of exports and refund on account of SAR supply, both calculations have been done separately. Export turnover upon total turnover into ITC of raw material labor, that is inputs and input services, 70 upon 200 into 36, so that is rupees 13, and similarly 50 upon 200 into 36 is rupees 9. So 13 rupees of refund is on account of export of goods, 9 rupees of refund is on account of SEZ supplies. So total the taxpayer can claim of rupees of claim refund of rupees 22, while you can see that he has paid ITC of rupees 90, including the capital goods, plant and machinery, which is not to be considered for this refund calculation purpose. So he is getting refund of 22 rupees only. And of course, somehow ITC will be utilized by him for knocking off the output liability on the local domestic supplies of rupees 18, which is 14 rupees. This is the basic calculation that has to be done for claiming refund. So once the refund application is filled and yes.
Harshit, I think I'll just like to chip in a bit over here.
Yes.
Yeah, we are getting many queries, and few people are raising their hands also for the question and answer session. Basically, we'll take up the questions at the end of the session. But yes, I wanted to make a few points on what Harshit has told, and I think he is very nicely taken up the basic provisions. And the most important one which has come in recently is this rule 89.4. If you, Harshit, if you can just move back the screen, your slide to the previous 1.5 times.
Yes, yes.
I think this is the previous one. Previous one.
The next.
So the example after that, yeah. So what has happened is that this is the new rule which has come from 1/4/2020, and wherein the rule has been made applicable. See, now let's understand, if a person is going to claim refund on payment of tax against export of goods, so in that case he will get the full refund of the tax whatever is paid on account of goods exported on by payment of tax, while making payment of tax. So that is one criteria. that criteria is not hit by this new provision. This new provision is applicable only when goods are sold without payment of tax, that is against a letter of undertaking. Now, what has been made applicable is that you may sell your goods. Say in this example, the goods are sold per unit at rupees 200 each. The dealer may actually sell the goods at rupees 200. The consideration by him will be of rupees 200, but the value to be calculated or to be considered for the purpose of that formula, which Harshit mentioned in the previous slide, as per Rule 89.4, the value to be taken for the purpose of turnover is restricted now. And I think the base which might have prompted the government to come out with this formula, I know it's a very obnoxious formula and very difficult to abide by, but the basis which we understand is, and what the government had told at that time, that there were very many cases of exports happening wherein the value of the goods was manipulated to claim the refund from the local taxes. Because what happens when a person is exporting goods under an LUT or without payment of tax, the ITC which is available to that person is granted as a refund. So that portion is what the government already had it in its pocket, and you are going to take it something out of government's pocket. And there the government has found and identified various cases wherein the value of the goods was manipulated and was enhanced possibly to claim the refund of the input tax credit, so as to fit in the best way in the formula. And those were caught, and after that at least 5,000 dealers were identified as risky dealers and risky exporters rather, and many of those cases are under scrutiny by the department. The customs department has handed over those cases to the CGST department, and those cases are still going on, and because of that most of the refunds are getting stuck, and many of the exporters have been put on an alert. Many of the cases of the exporters have been put on an alert. In this backdrop, this rule came in, and this rule states that for the purpose of calculating refund under LUT on export of goods, your value will be restricted to 1.5 times the value of such similar products which are sold locally. Now, how to identify that? I may be an exporter. Say, as taken in this example, I am exporting the goods at 200 rupees, and I am selling that particular product in the local market at 140 rupees. Since I am the manufacturer, I am at 200 to the country where the goods are exported, and I am selling domestically also. I know the value of the domestic product. But in some cases where, say, a dealer is dealing into niche products where he is preparing a specialized product and there is no other market for that product, how will the government or the dealer identify what is the value of the domestic product which is or a similar domestic product which is sold in the domestic market? I think that is very difficult to identify, and that is where the problem lies. Even if say the dealer is selling or exporting products which are sold by other competitors in the local market, or certain other people, maybe he is not selling those products but his competitors are selling, or maybe not even competitors, the product is a general product which is available in the market, and there are so many reasons that the product can be sold for. Maybe there could be a cash flow crunch, there could be quick payment issues, there could be litigation issues, there could be quality issues, and so many issues are there when the products are sold. And how would a comparable price come to match this formula? I think it is going to be very difficult of how to apply this formula. I think one of the questions which had come is that from when is this rule applicable? Say if I have exported the goods in 2019 and I'm claiming a refund in July 2020, will the rule apply to me today? I'm making an application today, this rule is present as on today, I had exported in July 2019, so will the rule apply to me today? My view is that this rule should apply only for exports happening after 1st April 2020 and not before, because at that point of time I was not knowing that such rule would suddenly come up. So this rule cannot override what transactions have been taken up in the past. So that is one view. Second point of view is that how to cater to this view, because I think it is as good as the transfer pricing provisions. But for transfer pricing now, there is a whole lot of science which has been made up, and there is a proper methodology of how to value and identify a transfer pricing value for a particular product which is sold, and with a particular range to transfer pricing is also available. The Government of India had also introduced transfer pricing for within India transfer of goods or sale of goods to associates or to related parties, and that ultimately they had to remove that rule. So as far as GST is concerned, first of all, there is no defined guideline or methodology of how it is to be done. Even if it is, if the guidelines are provided, there are so many scenarios and situations wherein the value of my sale of domestic products and value of my sale for exports can change. I may find a good client, and if I want to sell it to him at a higher value, why should I be denied that value, and why should I be denied a refund? If Mia Bibi Razi, to kya karega Kazi? It is something like that. Exporter, I want to export at a particular value, and he's ready to buy at that value. Then why should the government interfere into that? But still, nevertheless, this is what the scenario is. We need to be cautious of this. We need to take this into consideration, that such a rule has come from 1st of April 2020. And in case anything is to be planned out, we need to work that out. Or if we want to adhere to this rule, we need to keep on track. How do we comply with this rule? Say if you want to comply, okay, I'm ready to comply with this rule of 1.5%, then what should I be doing? I should be gathering and collating all the data which is available in the market. But are those rates correct? Can I do a Google search and, okay, this is the rate which was prevalent in the market on a particular date, and on that date I have exported those goods. I may have got a purchase order on a different date, and actual sale may happen on a different date. So I should see the invoice date or the purchase order date. Various issues will come up in this, but I think if we want to comply, at least we should know that this is the rule which has now become applicable. Of course, this rule would be challenged in the court of law, because this is not in the true spirit of the law. There is no corresponding provision in the law to state that the refund will be restricted on account of so and so calculation. Of course, the rules do provide for a methodology of how to calculate the refund, but restricting the value of a product is against Section 15, which already has mentioned that what should be the value of the product and what should be considered as a consideration for the exports made. So I think these are various issues which we need to consider for this rule. Well, fine. I think Harshit, you can take up the points. One more mention I wanted to make was where you mentioned that this rule is applicable only in case the goods are exported against LUT and not on payment of tax. So the exporter can consider whether he wants to sell goods on export on payment of tax and claim the refund, or he wants to sell against LUT. So that option every time the exporter will have to weigh. Of course, the exporter has the option. We receive queries that say in the month of July, on 1st of July, I am exporting on payment of tax, and on 2nd of July, can I export against an LUT? I don't think there is any bar. Even of say on, but the calculations and maintaining the records is only the criteria of how you will maintain and calculate your refunds in such cases. But there is no debar to the exporter that he has to sell only either on payment of tax or only on payment of LUT. Only concern is that if he is selling against an LUT, that LUT should be obtained before entering into the export transaction. That is the basic criteria, but there is no other criteria. And another important point which Harshit made was regarding the capital goods. When we go to the formula, Harshit, can you go to the next slide, subsequent? When we see this working which is made, now this working is for export made under LUT, that is without payment of tax. And here, when we see the formula of claiming the input tax credit, in this criteria, the input tax credit has been claimed on 27 rupees and 9 rupees, which is pertaining only to inputs and input services. Raw materials are inputs and labor charges are the input services. So only on these two counts, the refund is available. On the plant and machinery, which is again an eligible credit, if you are exporting on against an LUT, no input tax credit or refund rather, no refund is eligible against the capital goods. So again, this is a very important point for consideration. The exporters will have to always evaluate that how they want to export their goods, and this decision needs to be taken in advance when they are going to export the goods. And this cannot be a post-export exercise that, okay, now I exported the goods, now I want to claim the refund, how should I do? I think there has to be active proposition of how you want to export the goods, and this point should be considered. Over to Harshit again. I think Harshit, you can continue with your.
Yes. So once all these calculations are done, there are certain system checks or system validations that are implemented on the GST portal that define or restrict your refund value. So basically, the GST portal calculates the refund amount as list of the following amounts. So A is the amount that we have called it calculated as per 89.4. That is the whole formula. B is the balance in the electronic credit ledger at the end of the tax period for which a refund is being claimed after the return has been filed. So if we are filing refund application for January 20 to March 20, what was the balance in the electronic credit ledger after the GSTR 3B of March was filed is a criteria. Means if the amount of ITC that was available in the ledger at that particular point of time is a cap, you cannot claim refund more than that. And C is the amount of ITC available in the electronic ledger at the time of filing refund. So you are filing refund in the month of July. So on 1st July, for example, if you are filing, then what is the ITC available in your ITC ledger, electronic credit ledger at the time on 1st July is also criteria. So you cannot claim refund more than that. So maximum refund eligible calculation as per 89.4 is the basic. Then what was the ITC at the time of filing of the return for that period, and what is the balance of ITC in electronic at the time of refund application also have to be considered. It is mentioned in the example for better understanding. And once the amount is, and you can see that the calculation has to be done for CGST plus SGST plus cess all together, under 89.4. So all together CGST, SGST and cess has to be considered, and the maximum refundable amount in the A point is to be calculated. Once the amount is calculated, you are eligible for 20 lakh rupees of refund. So how will you claim this refund? Whether this refund will be of IGST, whether it will be of CGST, whether it will be of SGST or UTGST. So to determine that, a particular order has been defined in the circulars issued by the GST department. So first, all the ITC available under the IGST category has to be utilized totally. If 20 lakh rupees of refund you are eligible, and if there are 15 lakh rupees in your IGST ledger, utilize whole of the IGST, claim refund of 15 lakh rupees from the IGST ledger. Then 2,50,000 of CGST, 2,50,000 of SGST. SGST and CGST equally, it has to be done. In case there is shortfall in any of the CGST or SGST, adjustments can be made. And those adjustments have been mentioned in this particular example. So you can see over here, he is eligible for refund of 20 lakh rupees and 7,000, this particular dealer. And moving ahead, there's a second table below wherein the ITC at the time of filing of return and ITC at the time of filing of refund application have been mentioned in two separate columns. So it is 16 lakh rupees of IGST. So first 16 lakh rupees total IGST, 16 lakh 94,000 rupees total IGST I will claim as refund. Then CGST at the time of return it was 63,000. At the time of refund it is 65,000. So it is lower of the both. You have to take 63. You cannot take 65 because lower of the both. And in case of SGST, now at the time of return it was 399. At the time of refund it is 401. But I have taken over here 249. Why? Because the total of this should not be more than 2,07,000, which has been calculated in the first table you can see over here. So the total has to be 2,07,000 only. So the max cap. How you will calculate it? First use whole IGST, CGST, SGST equally. If equally not possible, then in the best manner possible. So in this case, it is 63,000 rupees. This is the lower, and here also 249 is lower of 399 and 401. So not an issue. So these all small criteria also need to be taken into consideration while filing the refund application.
Yeah, Harshit. The previous slide. So just to add, there is always a query from the exporters that my refund, as per, so first of all, I have to calculate the refund. Of course, calculating 1.5% net adjusted turnover, etc. After doing all those calculations, when the application is actually filed, in the point of filing, the three criteria which is rightly mentioned by Harshit is, say you are calculating or making an application today in July 2020. Say you are applying for a refund for January 2020, and you have an amount which is lying as on today. So for the month of January 20, you are claiming a refund, and the credit which was available at that point of time in the month of, you are claiming refund for 20 lakhs, and say the credit available in the month of January was only 18 lakhs. Because out of the credits which you had availed, you would have utilized, or the exporter would have utilized those credit, and hence this restriction comes first for the month or the tax period for which the refund is claimed. तो आपको 20 लाख का refund लेना था जनवरी महीने के लिए, लेकिन उसमें से 2 लाख आपने यूज कर दिया है, तो आपको बाकी 18 लाख ही मिलने वाला है. So that is the first restriction which the portal puts, and I think that is right. Second, as on today, say in July 2020, when you are making the application for refund, you are out of that 18 lakh. Today, what is available is only say 15 lakhs. आपको 20 लाख का refund लेना है as per formula. Okay, formula also, after going through all the processes of what is to be mentioned, what is the adjusted turnover, 1.5 times, etc., all that, eligible ITC, everything. Even after that, even after doing that, आपको 20 लाख का रिफंड लेना था. जनवरी में 18 लाख ही अवेलेबल था, और जुलाई 20 में जब भी आप रिफंड कर रहे हैं तभी सिर्फ 15 lakhs अवेलेबल है आपके इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर में. सो गवर्नमेंट अंडरस्टैंड्स दैट यू हैव यूटिलाइज्ड दैट अमाउंट in the subsequent months, and hence you are not eligible for claiming the refund amount because your utilization of input tax credit has happened within the electronic credit ledger itself, and hence this restriction is there. So we also always need to calculate what is the final refund eligible. Sometimes it may so happen, out of my claim of 20 lakh of refund for January, I may be having 18 lakh in the month of January, but in the month of July, because of my other purchases which were made in the month of June, there is a excess credit which is available, and I'm having an eligible credit of say 25 lakhs instead of 18 lakhs or 15 lakhs. So then, okay, so then I will be eligible to, again, lower of the three. In the month of January, only 18 lakh was available. I wanted to claim 20 lakh. Today, 25 lakh is available. I'll get 18 lakhs. So this arrangement has to be worked out every time, and that is called the total GST refund. And then, as Harshit rightly explained, within IGST, CGST, SGST, etc., also that bifurcation needs to be checked and compared. Yeah, Harshit, you can continue.
Yeah. So that was the basic refund calculation. So these are some of peculiar cases which exporters face, that refund in case of export of exempted goods. So ITC has been availed, but if you are supplying exempted goods, you are not allowed to claim ITC as per section 17. But as per section 16(2) of the IGST Act, credit of input tax may be availed for zero rated supply, notwithstanding that such supply is an exempt supply. So even if your supply is exempt supply, nil rated supply, but if you are exporting it, you can claim the ITC. If you are locally selling it, you cannot claim the ITC. If you are exporting it, you can claim the ITC. Once the ITC has been claimed, in case of zero rated supply of exempted goods or non-GST goods, the requirement for furnishing of bond or LUT cannot be insisted upon. That is, bond or LUT is in case where you are exporting the goods without payment of tax, and tax is applicable, but you are not paying it. So give us a letter of undertaking that you will pay the tax in case it is found that this was not an export or there was any other issue. But in this case, and these are exempted supplies, there is no requirement of LUT. In case of exempted goods, means it cannot be insisted upon. Clearly, it has been mentioned by the CBDT circular. So a person dealing in exempted goods may export goods without LUT. Second, the refund. The exporter would be eligible to claim refund of the unutilized ITC. He can not only claim the ITC, he can even claim refund of that ITC and even cess. So this needs to be kept in mind that in case of exempted goods, you can claim the ITC and you can even take the refund of ITC if you are exporting such exempted goods. If you are selling it locally, nothing is allowed. You cannot even claim the ITC. Plus, you don't need a LUT also, so that is a benefit. Second case is refund in case compensation cess is paid on inward supplies. So in this case, what happens is compensation says different tag, different charging section, but the refund provisions are same. Refund provision would apply as per CGST Act only and not as per the compensation to states acts. So here also there are two situations where only inward supply is liable to cess and outward supply is not liable to cess. It can be anything like many people purchase coal but while exporting the final product, they do not. It is a different product. It is not coal, and but on cess has to be paid on coal. So in case of inward supplies, only when cess is paid on inward supplies, refund of cess ITC can be claimed under section 54(3) by exporting goods under LUT. So if you want to claim the refund of the cess ITC, you can claim it only if you export the goods under LUT. Because if you export it with payment of IGST, you cannot pay cess on the same. Cess is not applicable. So cess cannot be paid on it. So since cess cannot be paid, the ITC accumulated in cess cannot be utilized and it will just remain there. You will never be able to claim refund of the same and it will be just dead ITC. You cannot even utilize it nor claim refund. So it is always better when there is ITC accumulated to go with the LUT option if your outward supply is not liable to cess. Second scenario is both inward and outward supply is liable to cess. Then in case the taxpayer has both the options, either under LUT by not paying cess at all, and second is with payment of IGST and cess. So while filing shipping bill, cess and IGST both amounts will be mentioned. And similarly, while filing 3B and GSTR1, both amount have to be mentioned. Both amounts should match with the shipping bill. It will get transferred to the IceGate website and you will get the refund of cess as well as IGST if it is made with payment of tax. So in scenarios where outward supply is not liable to cess, it is very important to note that export has to be made under LUT if you want to take refund of the cess so accumulated. Otherwise, it is just dead ITC. Second is refund in case of merchant exporters. So merchant exporter means a person engaged in trading activities, basically a trader. He is not a manufacturer exporting or intending to export goods. So major relief has been provided by notification number 40/2017 and 41/ of CGST and 41/2017 of IGST, where partial exemption has been given with effect on 23rd October, wherein merchant exporters can procure goods from domestic suppliers at a concessional rate of 0.1% only. But it is a very important that export of the goods so procure has to be made within 90 days from the date of issue of tax invoice. And there are many other criteria that have been mentioned in the notification and even in the circulars 35, 40, 37, 45 and all those circulars has been mentioned that various procedures that shipping bill has to be given to the officer and means procuring goods at 0.1% also comes with a lot of procedural requirements that need to be followed. It is clarified that benefit of supply at concessional rate is subject to certain conditions and the said option benefit is optional. So it is optional for a merchant exporter. You can procure at 0.1% or at normal 18%, whatever it is, taking your working capital requirements into mind and whatever cash available and all those things need to be considered while taking this decision. The option may or may not be availed by the supplier or recipient and the goods may be procured at normal applicable tax rate. It is also clarified that merchant exporter will be eligible to take credit of this 0.1%. So only 0.1% tax has been paid. So he can claim credit. It is not like it is cost. He can claim credit and he can even claim refund of this 0.1% paid by him at the time of procuring such goods. The supplier who supplies good at concessional rate is eligible for refund under section 54(3). 54(3) means basically the supplier who is selling goods at 0.1%, he may be purchasing at 18%. So purchase at 18, selling at 0.1%, this becomes an inverted duty structure, and he can also claim refund under the inverted duty structure category, which is of the GST portal and section 54. So both the supplier and the recipient can claim refund under two different categories. So this is basically the chart. The registered supplier will sell at 0.1% to registered merchant exporter. Then merchant exporter can export such goods compulsorily under LUT only and claim refund under section 54(3) of unutilized ITC only. He cannot export goods cannot export goods with payment of IGST. This has been specifically mentioned in the rules and even in circulars that the benefit of procuring at concessional rate allowed to of 0.1% is allowed to merchant exporter, subject to the condition that merchant exporter exports goods under LUT and bond and cannot export goods on payment of integrated tax as per rule 9610. So this is a very important criteria, everyone, because normally exports are made at 18%. Suddenly one export is made at normally purchases are made at 18%. Suddenly one purchase is made at 0.1%. So it has to be noted that such the goods procured at 0.1% are exported under LUT only and not with payment of tax. It is not allowed, and you may get the refund, but you'll have to repay the refund, and all those procedures are very. No one wants to get into it. So please do take care while entering into such transactions of merchant export.
Yeah, Arshit, very important point in the previous slide. I think we have witnessed cases wherein exporters have procured their goods under 0.1% criteria and then exported them on payment of tax. उनको लगा कि भाई हमारे पास दूसरा ITC अवेलेबल है, we will utilize that ITC and we will encash that ITC by selling this particular goods on payment of tax, because payment of tax, customs department is not verifying this fact that whether you have procured the goods on payment of tax or against 0.1%. So that they are not verifying, and you will get the refund also. Refund मिल भी जाता है और ITC encash हो जाता है, but that is not the right way. And wherein government has found out through their data analysis and the data intelligence tools which they are using, they have found out, and such exporters have been put into the risky exporters category. So we need to be careful that if we purchase against 0.1%, the exporter cannot export on payment of tax. It has to be under an LUT only. And one more point is that the refund can be claimed either by the merchant exporter or by the person who is selling the goods against 0.1. So both of them cannot simultaneously claim the same refund. The merchant exporter can claim only of the 0.1% which is available to him and not of the value of the full goods. So that we need to keep in mind. Yeah, Ashok.
So these are the issues involved in the merchant exporter scheme of GST. So these were the particular cases here. We have mentioned the different documents that are required while filing refund application. So a statement has to be filed giving all the details of the shipping bill, EGM details, shipping bill date, from which port it was exported, the calculation, how net ITC was calculated, how much is the net ITC, how turnover of zero-rated supply of goods was calculated. All those details have to be given in this particular statement 3 and statement 3A as far as export of goods is concerned. And and also shipping bill has to be provided in case of goods, and in case of services, BIRC and FIRC copy is compulsory. You have to upload it while filing the refund application, otherwise refund will not be processed. So this is an important FIRC for services and shipping bill for goods. In case of supply of goods to SCR under LUT, same way statement 5, you have to mention all the details. This is the invoice, this is the endorsed invoice copy, what was the amount of IGST in it, and all those details have to be mentioned. How those details were calculated has to be mentioned in statement 5A. And similarly under statement 4, if SCR supply was made on payment of IGST. So all the details have to be mentioned invoice wise and shipping bill number wise. However, in case of SCZ supply, one additional declaration is required to be taken to the effect that tax has not been collected from the SCZ. So we are supplying to the SCZ under LUT or with payment of tax. In both the scenario, we need to ensure that tax was not collected from the SEZ. If tax was collected from the SEZ and again you are claiming GST refund, that is clearly unjust enrichment, which is not allowed under any law and specifically mentioned under GST law, and it is not allowed. So that declaration has to be there that tax has not been collected from SEZ and endorsed from the specified officer of SEZ for receipt of goods or services are also required. That copy of the invoice or services has to be endorsed by the SEZ officer, ensuring that these goods were received by the SEZ and were used by the SEZ in the SEZ zone. These are the specific requirements for SEZ and export. And other, there are common documents that are required for all kind of refund applications. That declaration under section 54(3) that the goods are not subjected to export duty and duty drawback has not been claimed in respect of the GST portion. Undertaking under section 16(2) and 42, that is, if ITC was found as ineligible and refund was granted, then refund has to be paid back to the government. Self declaration that no prosecution of more than 2.5 crore is pending against the taxpayer in any forum. So that also has to be given, otherwise that refund is halted. So this declaration is to be given. Self declaration also has to be given, wherein we have to mention that the incidence of the tax of the ITC has not been transferred to the recipient of the goods. So incidence of tax has not been transferred. This also declaration has to be given in case of export and SEZ, and in fact all the types of export which we may see. A copy of the GST at 2A for the relevant period also has to be attached, and the statement of invoices, that invoices of in respect of all the ITC that has been availed during that particular period. So invoices and bifurcation has to be given. This invoice, this HSN code, this is an inputs, this is input services, this is eligible, this is ineligible under section 17. All those details invoice wise have to be given in the annexure B statement of invoices. That should match with 2A. All the invoices here should match with 2A. Only then you will get the refund of those particular of the ITC in respect of those particular invoices. So all those checking has to be done invoice wise level basis, comparing with 2A, HSN codes, input services, different bifurcation, different calculations. All things have to be done before filing refund application. All these things may, if this is done rightly, refund can be processed within 10 to 15 days of the refund application. It can go that fast if everything is correct. Otherwise, it will just delay the process. So now this is a new rule, Rule 96B, wherein refund has been granted to the exporter, but the export proceeds have not been realized. This is particular for export of goods. As we saw earlier, for export of services, refund application cannot be made only unless the export proceeds are totally realized. In case of export of goods, there was no such criteria anyway. But now this criteria has been mentioned, introduced under the rule, but it is a post-export, post-refund criteria. We have got even the refund. After that, this criteria comes into question, that where any refund of unutilized ITC or GST paid on export of goods, when export is made under LUT or with payment of tax, in both cases, this particular rule is applicable. That if the sales proceed in respect of such goods is not realized within the time permitted by the FEMA. FEMA normally permits 9 months from the date of export, but now in the COVID-19 scenario, they have that particular time limit has been extended up to 15 months. So the export proceeds have to be realized within 15 months from the date of export. If they are not realized, then the refund so granted to the taxpayer has to be given back to the government with interest, along with interest within 30 days of the expiry of the said period. So if within 9 months the amount of export proceeds are not realized, then 9 months plus 30 days, within 10 months you have to pay back all the refund amount that you had claimed and received with respect of those particular exported goods. Failing which, if refund shall be recovered in accordance with section 1774, notice will be issued, so-called notice, interest, penalty, all that will follow. So it is always better to keep a track, and in case it is not received, pay it as soon as possible, because once it is paid, and if you receive it after say 18 months or maybe 17 months, so where the sales proceeds are realized by the applicant in full or part after that particular after the period of 9 months, and once the refund has also been given back to the government, so the applicant can procure evidence about such realization within a period of 3 months from the date of realization of the said proceeds and give it to the officer. So within, if the export was proceeds were received after 16 months, then 16 months plus 3 months, that is within 19 months, the evidence that the export proceeds have been received has to be given to the officer. If it is given, the amount so recovered shall be refunded again by the officer to the applicant to the extent of realization of sales proceeds. That is, this whole structure is proportionate. So if 100 rupees were exported and 20 rupees refund was claimed, and if only 50 rupees have been realized till date, so only 10 rupees, that is proportionate, 50%, 10 rupees refund only has to be given back to the government. And then if of those 50, another 25 is received, so 25% of 20, that is 5 rupees refund we can again take from the government. So it is on proportionate basis, not like total proceeds have to be received, otherwise whole refund will be denied and it will be demanded back. So no, it is on proportionate basis at each and every step. Further, however, sales proceeds, in case where this particular requirement of receiving the sales proceeds within the time period allowed under FEMA is written off by the RBI, then the refund will not be recovered by the government. So if in your particular scenario you have got a relief from RBI that this particular requirement of FEMA of realization of sale proceeds is not applicable to us in this particular case, then the refund will not be demanded back. This is a new provision, new rule effective from 1st April 2020, and so it is just like the 1.5 times rule. This is also new, and it is important to keep a track of this to avoid interest and penalty in future. Time limit for claiming
Yeah,
GST.
Harshit.
Yes.
Just in the previous slide, previous one. So I think one more very obnoxious rule which has been put in by the government over here is regarding the time limit for realizing the export proceeds on export of goods in case where the goods have been exported on payment of IGST. So this is not applicable to goods exported under LUT. So again, demarcation. I think whenever we are talking of exports of goods or services, we really need to understand and demarcate first of all that whether the export is happening on payment of tax or without payment of tax, because the rules are different.
In this case, it is applicable to both LUT. Both.
Yeah, this is on both. Sorry. Yeah, so this is on both. But whenever we are talking of export of goods or export of services, we really need to bifurcate that whether the payment is happening, whether the exports are happening on payment of tax or they are happening against an LUT. The point which comes into consideration is that this rule has been brought into effect recently. This 96B has been inserted in April 2020. And it says that there's a time limit of 9 months, which is applicable that the realization of the export proceeds should come within the period of 9 months. So again, the basic question which comes in, say I had exported my goods in January 2020, I had made a refund application in March 2020, and I received my money in December 2020. Excluding all this COVID scenario, we exclude the COVID scenario or the extension pertaining to COVID. But subject to that, so when will this rule apply? Will it apply when the 9-month period is getting over, or will it apply when the refund application is made, or will it apply at the time when the goods are exported? I think it should apply only in the situations where to the periods from where the goods are exported. The date should be after this date only. This rule should apply. It should not apply to the goods which have been exported earlier. Because how would an exporter know that suddenly the government would come out with a condition which would say that the realization has to happen within 9 months, else the refund which is granted will be recovered back. The entire section of the rule which we say is talking of refund granted to be recovered back. So at the time of granting refund, they are not seeing that rule. You make an application for refund and you get the refund. But in case if you don't get it within the stipulated time, the amount refunded will be recovered with interest. And then it goes on to say, okay, if you get it subsequently, you can again apply within a particular time frame, and again apply for that refund, and we will grant you that refund. But then what happens to the interest which has been paid because of the delay in receiving the consideration? Because my export refund which was granted earlier, I will have to repay back if I don't receive the consideration within 9 months. I may receive it after say 15 months, but and the government takes back the refund with interest. So what will happen to the interest which is paid? Will I get the interest paid back? There is no such provision which is made by the government. So again, a very harsh rule which has been come up to regulate the exports. I don't know how they are mentioning that it is all ease of doing business, but in this difficult times, getting in the money in time is difficult. Of course, the FEMA provisions do have their respective restrictions of getting the consideration on the export of goods and services, but nevertheless, there is no such provision in the GST Act. If we see the CGST Act or the IGST Act, there is no provision or the time limit which has been set by the Act. And how can a rule override the Act and lay down a time limit or a limitation period for realization? So if there is no such provisions, no such provision under the Act, I think the rule should not restrict it. This rule itself seems to be challengeable in the court of law. Because as far as the export of services is concerned, there is a specific provision in the IGST Act which mentions that the goods have to be realized, and only after realization of the proceeds of export of services, the person is able to make the application for refund. So there is a provision in the Act itself, but as far as the goods export of goods is concerned, there is no such provision, and this rule can be challenged by the exporters. Yeah, Harshit.
Yeah, so but we need to keep a track, and tax, interest, penalty, everything would follow, and litigation would also follow in this particular case.
Yeah, correct.
So that was all related to the provisions and the issues and various cases of export of refund in case of exports and SEZ supply. So time limit for claiming for GST refund in case of exports. So basically it is that as per section 54(1), any person claiming refund of tax or interest, if any paid on such tax, or their amount paid, shall make an application before the expiry of 2 years from the relevant date. So time limit is 2 years from the relevant date. So 2 years from the relevant date is what we will see in now. So as per notification number 35 of 2020, all the expiry of this 2 years falling within the period 20th March 2020 to 30th August 2020, this particular means there is an extension given till 31st August 2020. Means if the 2 year period was expiring between 20th March to 30th August, then the new due date for filing the refund application is 31st August. So this is a COVID-19 benefit or kind of a relaxation given by the government. So these are basically the time limit in case of export of goods. So export of goods by the sea, the date on which the ship or the aircraft on which such goods are loaded leaves India. So that it is from that date. When in case of sea and air, it is when the ship or aircraft leaves India. By way of land is a date on which such goods pass the customs frontier. And if in case the goods are exported by post, then the date of dispatch of goods by the post office concerned to a place outside India. So 3 different cases are possible, and accordingly the 2 year calculation has to be done from different dates in case of export of goods. In case of export of services, where the supply of service has been completed prior to the receipt of payment, relevant date is the date of receipt of payment of convertible foreign currency. Means if the supply of service has been completed before the payment, date of payment is a relevant date, and 2 years from then. Where payment for service has been received in advance, then the relevant date is the date of issue of invoice. So if services are completed before date of payment, if advance payment has been received, then date of issue of invoice is the relevant date in case of supply of export of services. In case of deemed exports, the date on which return relating to which deemed exports are furnished will be the relevant date. So relevant date also needs to be considered basically it is always advisable to file on a quarterly basis or 6 monthly basis. So this 2 month criteria is 2 years criteria is not breached, and even the inflow of refund is on a continuous basis. So procedure for the online refund application, this is the last part. So a summary has been depicted through this chart. That first refund application has to be filed online in form RFD01. Once the refund application is filed, the officer will go through with the refund application, whether all the declarations, documents, GSTR 2A, all the invoices and all the shipping bills have been provided or not. In case the officer finds that there is some deficiency in the refund application, some documents, statements, declarations are not provided, he will issue us a deficiency memo. Once deficiency memo is issued, we have to rectify that particular discrepancy, that is give him that details, documents, whatever, and re-upload a fresh GST refund application. So you have to redo that uploading of GST refund application work in case any deficiency is noticed by the officer in the refund application. In case it is not issued, in case deficiency memo is not issued, then RFD02 is issued. That is acknowledgement. The officer acknowledges that the application is complete in all respect as far as documentation is concerned. Within 15 days of the ARN, acknowledgement is received by the is provided, issued by the officer in GST RFD02. So in case of export, there is a special procedure of provisional refund. Provisional refund is not applicable in any other case. It is applicable only in case of zero rated supplies under LUT. So only then provisional refund is applicable, wherein 90% of the refund is issued by the officer within 7 days of RFD02. So basically, once I file the refund application, 15 days for RFD02, that is the acknowledgement, and another 7, that is within 22 days, provisional refund order sanctioning 90% of the refund amount is issued by the officer, and within another 7 days, say till 30th day, you will get the amount in your bank account. So it will take 30 days to get 90% of the refund amount in your bank account. So it is very fast, taking into consideration all the complications, calculations and procedures involved. It will happen within 30 days, you will get the 90% refund. Once 90% refund is given, officer will redo all the calculations on his own, will go through all the invoices. If in case he finds that this particular credit is not eligible or certain amount of export is not eligible, he will redo the calculation. And in case the amount of refund calculated by officer is less than the refund amount mentioned by us in the application, he will issue us a notice in form RFD08, and we have to give reply within 7 to 15 days in RFD09. So this is only in case any shortfall or shortcoming is noticed by the officer in the calculations and in the technical and provisional issues. These are provisional means law issues, or any particular deficiency in particular document that export is not eligible for refund and all those things. He will issue us RFD08, and for reducing the refund amount or even rejecting the whole refund. Once we have given the reply, final refund, either rejection or sanction order is passed, and this final order has to be passed within 60 days from RFD02. That is within 75 days of the refund application. 15 days of RFD02 plus 60 days, that is within 75 days. Final refund order will be passed, granting 100% refund, and within another 7-8 days, you will get whole refund amount in your bank account. So this time limit was never followed before, but is now being followed. And in case this 60 days criteria is breached, then the exporter is eligible for interest under section 56 at the rate 6%. So, but there is no specific, refund. That interest is not given directly to us. So I think the system, it should be incorporated in the system that within 16 days refund is not granted, final order is not passed, 6% interest should automatically given to the exporter, which is not happening, and which is causing a lot of issue. Refunds are pending for 1.5, 2 years even after the order was passed. So, and interest is also not given. So for that interest, different physical application has to be made. But by then the taxpayer is like, I have received the refund amount, that is only good, I am not interested in the interest amount. That is why they will lose on the interest amount, but one can pursue it. So the procedure, these are basically the layout, which is a different application types that are available on the GST portal. Refund of excess balance in electronic credit ledger, refund of ITC on account of export of goods. So these are the various different types of refund applications. You have to select one, mention the period down over here. As of now, refund application cannot be one refund application cannot be done for 2 financial years. Though notification has been issued, circular has been issued by the government in this behalf, but the GST portal is not equipped yet. So refund application will be restricted or limited to that particular financial year only on the GST portal as of now. Though circular has come that it can, can be filed a merging 2 financial years. So this was the basic layout and the different types of refund applications that are there. And we have covered SEZ with payment of tax, without payment of tax, and export of goods and services under payment of tax, and export of services with payment of tax. This was it, taking it, mentioning all the provisions, procedures, and the time limit for claiming refund in case of exports and SEZ supplies. So I think we will take up the questions now, sir.
Yeah, Harshit, well done. Well, friends, I know there are several questions which have come up. We will take them up one after the other. Harshit has explained us today only a part of this refund procedure, which is relating to exports. There are certain other provisions wherein refund can be claimed where it is towards excess payment of tax, where there is excess payment made, there is no export, but there is an excess payment, then there are separate procedures for that. Then there is the case of inverted duty structure, wherein say you are buying goods at 18% and you are selling your goods at 12%. So such types of supplies fall under the inverted duty structure, and such supplies are also eligible for a refund claim. And sometimes we have seen that in the case of exporters, they are eligible for both criteria, exports also and for the inverted duty structure also. There it becomes a bit more complicated at which criteria to follow. But the government is very clear on this, that once you are falling under exports, you will have to follow the exports criteria and not the inverted duty structure criteria. So there is, we have seen overlapping in many such cases. But these are some of the provisions wherein a refund can be claimed. And as rightly said by someone, that you can export goods or services out of the country, but taxes should not get exported out of the country, and hence these provisions for refund are there. And rightly so, people do harp on the refund that they have to receive from the government, and their costings and workings and cash outflows are also dependent on the refund which is receivable from the government. So it's a very important thing. We at APMH have been regularly striving to educate our clients across the board by writing various blogs and articles on various topics. All of them are available at www.apmh.in. You can go to the knowledge center over there, and you will find various articles, various case laws that we have encountered. Our research materials are also there on the blog. You can always view them. And I'm sure you would all be receiving our GST Mitra. Now it's, I think we have already been sending it very regularly, and we have been getting feedback also, and always trying to improvise on the same. In case you have any suggestions for further improvising our GST Mitra, do inform us. It's our regular feature. Of course, we also have the direct tax Mitra, which is sent separately by our direct tax team. So those are also there. It's just to educate, and those are not the views that we express, but those are the latest updates which keep on coming time and again by the government. Even in this COVID scenario, I think there have been more than 45 to 50 circulars and notifications by the government. The government is actively working on it, and keeping on modifying and making the amendments to the law and administering it, because many things are required to administer that also. So all these circulars keep on coming, and there are various intricacies which keep on coming. And as and when a new circular or a rule comes, like we have the 1.5 times or the realization of export proceeds, it leads to new anomalies in law and new challenges. And that's what we try to teach and explain or enrich the knowledge of our participants. And I hope we have been able to do that. I'll ask Harshit only to take up the questions. In case if need require, I'll chip in over there. Harshit, you can take up the questions.
Okay, then basically this first question is from Mr. Ravi Potedar. Uh, I am an independent agent. I represent an MNC registered in USA. On behalf of my supplier, I provide the following services: promoting product of MNC to customers, participating in trials at customer plants, discussing price negotiation, collect samples from customers. So basically, what this is are kind of I think, Pranava, these are support services which are being provided, and so the location is in India, but the place of supply, and this is an gray area as of now, specifically because these have been considered as support services and considered as even intermediary services in different AARs, and so whether refund can be claimed or cannot be claimed is in dispute in this particular conditions, because since commission is being received, you become an intermediary service, and in case of it is an intermediary service, the place of supply becomes in India, and since the place of supply becomes in India and it is not outside India, it is no longer being classified as export of services. It becomes local supply of services. You have to in fact pay GST on the same, and there is no refund to be taken in this particular situation. So,
yes, Harshit, well said. Yeah, well said. Well said, Harshit. Yeah, you are right. This is the question not of refund, but this is the question of whether tax is payable on the services provided, whether it will be considered as an export of service, or whether it will be a service which will be liable to tax within India. This topic by itself is a very controversial topic. We have seen various advanced authority rulings which have come in favor and against the dealers who have been indulged in such activities. We need to actually review and understand the various agreements and the nature of services which are being provided. I can say in general that if the services are provided as a commission agent, where it is facilitating the provision of goods and services on behalf of the principal, then yes, this is a commission income which is received in India from a foreign principal, and then in such cases it will be liable to GST. But in case if these are only support services which are given for given to the foreign company or the foreign principal, then there is a scope that these services may not be taxable, and this may be services or which is charged on a cost plus basis or on a particular type of model, and this can amount to export of services. So actually the specific facts of the case need to be checked, but if it is a 1:1 wherein the customer and the principal are directly involved and there are three parties involved, then yes, it is a fit case for liable to GST. Otherwise it may not be liable to GST. But this is not the case for a refund. You may have to pay GST or you may have to export it, but it is not a case for refund.
No, refund will come into the scenario if ITC is being accumulated and
so the query is related to the supply of services, right. And of course the refund provisions as may be applicable would be applicable.
Right. Next question is by Mr. Shailesh Pandya. So this is net ITC is ITC less amount not reflected in 2A. So yes, as per the latest circular, that has been mentioned, but it is nowhere mentioned in the rules or even in the notifications that ITC not being reflected in 2A shall not be granted as refund. But in the circular issued in May only, they have told that not to give refund or block the refund of ITC not being reflected in 2A, and that is being followed now. Earlier how it was that if the ITC is not being reflected in 2A, we have to upload that particular invoice, self-certified copy of that particular invoice on the while filing the refund application, and you would get its refund. You would get its refund. So that was more, workable. Refund and ITC and a whole process was not getting stalled just because the supplier has not filed GSTR1. But now after this circular, it is going to be a problem.
Yes. So
may lead to litigation.
Correct. So Shailesh bhai wants to know that whether this is in the right spirit. Of course, it is not in the right spirit because the earlier provision was a better provision, and you had a chance to submit a physical copy of the invoice and claim the GST. But now the government feels that everything is on the portal and there is a direct matching which is available, and according to them, the systems are stabilized. That is what they feel, and hence they feel that 2A is sacrosanct for claiming the input tax credit. and credit will be granted only towards that. But it is not in the right spirit, because as an exporter or as a person who has procured the goods, I'm in possession of the invoice. Section 16.2 is there, and it says that, and if I fulfill all the conditions as per section 16.2, I'm having the invoice, I have received the goods, the supplier has paid the taxes, I have filed my returns, and I have claimed my input tax credit, and I have claimed it in time. Then where is the question of not allowing my credit if it is the fault of the supplier for not uploading it in 2A? And in a scenario wherein the entire system of matching mismatching, which was originally envisaged when GST came in, that first a GSTR 1, then GSTR 2A, then again GSTR 1, 1A, and then GSTR 3 return was to be filed. If that scenario was there, there were chances and options available to rectify those errors. But under this scenario, there is no such option available, and this is again a provision which can be challenged in the court of law. But seeing the difficulties as of now, this is what is available, and I don't think the department will be granting full refund unless and until they are able to match it with 2A. But this should be challenged in court of law in case if there are major issues pertaining to less availability of credit because of 2A. And one more point I wanted to make in this is that in this extended dates, in this due to this COVID pandemic, various dates have been extended, and many suppliers have not been able to file their 2A, their GSTR 1, and hence the credit is not reflecting in 2A. So as of now, those who want to actually claim it through and match it through GSTR 2A, it is difficult because suppliers are not able to file their GSTR 1, and the dates have also got extended. So multiple issues with this. Yeah.
Pranab, there is one more question on that same lines, wherein Mr. Chandresh is asking about whether the 2A provision is retrospective or prospective in nature.
It is not actually provision or even notification. It is a circular only where they have mentioned that 2A credit has to be restricted. So of course it is prospective in nature, because prior to that there was a different circular number 125, wherein it was mentioned that even if invoice was not received, invoice is not reflected in 2A, upload a self-certified copy of the same, you will get the refund. So it is surely a prospective circular, because the previous circular said otherwise. This circular came in and has said that okay, now you cannot get. So I think it is a prospective circular.
Yeah, so one more point to add in that is that of course this circular is prospective, but what is happening that when the officers are checking their GSTR today, and if it is a claim pertaining to a period earlier, they are matching it with 2A as on today, whatever is available on their screen. It is not that it is made to exports which have been made after a particular date that this circular is applicable. It is applicable even to the exports which have been made earlier, which the officer is checking for the refund claim today. So in a sense, this provision is retroactive in nature. It is not retrospective, but it is retroactive in nature, that it is also made applicable by the department to all the refund claims which are being filed as on today.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So next question is by Ms. Swati. In 1819 export refund not yet received after amending the return, still we not receive GST refund. I think they are. This is in regard to export with payment of tax, wherein they are made with payment of tax, paid the tax using 3B, but yet refund is not received because there was some issue in GST return. So that issue also they have amended, but still they have not received refund in respect of those particular shipping bills. So in this case, a particular circular has been issued by GST and even customs, wherein we have to fill a particular concordance table, and there is an annexure mentioning all the details, and then we have to physically visit the customs location wherever it is and tell them that we have not received this is the details, these are the shipping bills, kindly grant us the refund, and the refund is then given physically, so that it becomes a physical exercise, and which may, and there are drives by the customs department to clear these kind of refunds. So it is always better that whenever that refund fortnight is going on, you should go visit the customs department and get these refunds. Now, of course, in the lockdown, it is not possible. Once the lockdown is lifted, maybe government may come up with another refund fortnight, and that time you can visit the department with all the shipping bills and the statements of as per the circular, and maybe get the refund.
Right. Next.
Next, we had filed GSTR. It is by Mr. Sandeep. We had filed GSTR. I think it's no more. I'm no more visible. I don't know. I'll take the next
Nitesh, I
question.
think it has gone to the answered category.
We had filed GSTR 9 that time. We had know that our ITC is more than paid GST. So my query: how to claim unutilized ITC for export of goods? So you can claim now also if that 2-year criteria has not been breached. Your refund can be claimed even today by filing a refund application. If you find out that there is unutilized ITC after filing the annual return, that is why 2 years have been given, no? So, but of course, that since for 17-18 GSTR 9 was filed so late, I think that 2 years might have breached, and now there is no option available to claim refund of that. So I think the ITC can always be utilized to make with payment of tax export and claim refund. So that is another way. If it is a lot and export are on a continuous basis, then it is difficult to get refund of the same. Next question is again by Ms. Swati. In GST portal, data is transmitted to IceGate, but it is still pending. So what is the process to get it done? So there is, I think whatever invoices or whatever shipping bill in respect of his refund has not been received, mail has to be sent to IceGate help desk, and that these are the invoices. All the details again have to be mentioned. There is a particular statement they will give you. You have to fill it, give them the details. Then they will tell you why it has been blocked or whatever it is that whatever is the reason it is blocked. In case it is blocked because of some reasons of the officer, then again maybe go and physically meet the officer and get the refund. So that is the issue with payment, export with payment of tax. Once the refund gets stuck, it just gets stuck and there is no way to get it unless you physically go there, meet the officer and get it done. And that also means it is not sure that it will be done so quickly. Next question is, kindly advise circular no allowed money in our currency for export of service. Actually, it's not circular. It is basically in the section only that currency in case of export of services has to be realization of proceeds has to be in foreign exchange currency only. So I do not.
I'll just add to this. Generally, it is allowed only in foreign convertible exchange. Yes, there was a circular which mentioned that in case if exports are to Nepal, then and in case of services, the money can be received in Indian currency if exports are to Nepal. So I think, and these are the only 2 cases where it is allowed. There is one more question from someone which was asking that whether if the amount is received in my Vostro account. I think Chandresh Bhai has mentioned that. If Indian rupee is received via a Vostro account, shall it qualify as export of services? So I do understand that even if the amount is coming through a Vostro account, it is an account which is maintained with the permission of RBI, and it would qualify as a convertible exchange even if INR is coming through a Vostro account, because it is with the permission of RBI that these amounts are parked in the Vostro account, and then they are released from that account. So in such cases, a certificate will have to be obtained from the person who is making the payment that he has kept it in a Vostro account, and otherwise it is difficult because at officer level we are not able to identify from the bank statements that whether the amount has come in a foreign currency or it has come in Indian rupees. So there we need to have a statement. And foreign inward remittance certificate are generally required at the time of claiming any export of refund of services. In the case of export of refund of services, FIRC is mandatory. So we need to claim that only for just identifying that it is an export of service, or to qualify as an export of service, you need to receive in convertible foreign exchange. But if you want to claim a refund, a foreign inward remittance certificate is a mandatory criteria that we need to keep in mind.
Right. So moving to next question is by Miss Jinali. She's asking basically about the denominator, that is adjusted total turnover to be taken after considering 1.5 times the value or as in GST returns. So I think it is to be considered as per GST returns only and not as per the 1.5 times. The 1.5 times criteria is for the numerator and it is not for the denominator. Of course, this is an anomaly and there have been judgments in excise that means calculation of denominator and numerator should not be on different lines, and so it is all means prone to litigation
Yeah,
as
it is
of
prone to
now.
litigation. Yes,
uh,
it is prone to litigation, but the intention is to reduce the refund,
yes.
and that is why this cap has been wrapped. So, in case if I keep the numerator and denominator same, how will the refund get reduced in that particular scenario? So possibly the intention appears to be that the numerator will get reduced and the denominator will remain the same, and hence the ITC will get reduced. That appears to be the intention of the government.
Yes, correct. Yes, right. Also, next question is by Mr. Chandresh. If inputs are under advance authorization, shall we allowed to export goods with payment of tax with claim of rebate? So, in case it is on advance authorization, I think the uh, problem here is that there is no ITC available, because if it is an advance authorization, GST is not been paid and ITC has not been availed. So I think in this, it should be done under LUT. Should be, but I think
Yeah,
Pranav
yeah,
sir may.
my view is also the same, because if we are not because of the advance authorization, no tax has been paid at the time of acquiring those
Goods.
products, and if
Hmm.
IGST is not paid, so basically it all pertains to if IGST has been paid, then you will be able to make payment on you will have to be export on payment of tax. If IGST is not paid, like we saw in the case of the merchant exporter had the option of buying the goods at 0.1% or buying the goods at the full value with full tax. So similarly, and in that case, merchant exporter procures the goods at 0.1%. He can sell only under an LUT and not under payment of tax. Similarly, in this case also, advance authorization, I think it has to be on against LUT only, and you will not be able to claim, but we can still confirm the same. You can mail the query, Chandresh bhai, we'll go through it, because I think it is talking something about rebate also. We can work out on it again later on also.
Hmm. Right. So I think the next question is again by Mr. Chandresh only. What if RFD 02 or RFD are not issued even after 3 months from date of application? So yes, this has happened in case of physical applications. In case of online applications, I have not faced such a scenario where RFD 02 was not RFD 02 or it was not issued for such long period. But first thing would be to file a grievance, because on the GST portal also there is specific grievance category which mentions that refund application is filed but RFD 02 is not issued within 15 days or this. So you can file the grievance on the GST portal first thing, and this should get it done. Maybe then contacting the officer, because in case of online there is no contact with the officer. The refund is given directly by the officer after verifying it. Otherwise, physically approaching the officer and asking him to process RFD 02 and RFD 03, it is also one more option. But filing online grievance is first. I think it is the first thing you should do, because I have seen specific criteria is also there for this particular category. So it is better to file the grievance first and wait for the uh, grievance team's response. GST help desk response. So one more question is by Mr. Shailesh Pandya, that service exporting company files LUT late in FY 18-19 in July 18. What are the consequences? So for the financial year 17-18, particular circular was issued wherein this delay in filing LUT was condoned. Even if LUT is not filed and export is made without payment, condone the delay. LUT has to be filed late, so late, file it. Do not claim the refund. Now, since this is 18-19 in July 18, so what are the consequences? The consequences could be that the government can tell them no, pay the refund and then take the refund, and with interest you have to pay, and all those things are possible. But again, administrative procedure lapse it is. Maybe relief can be granted by the government if it is deemed fit by the department. If it is deemed fit by the department, but otherwise, there is always an option that you will have to pay in cash and then take the refund. So this is the, I think, last query which I can see. We have received the export bill payment in INR from foreign party in our bank account as RTGS. We have asked our banker for FIRC document, but they are saying that FIRC is not possible in this case as received payment by RTGS from other bank in India. Please suggest how can we get FIRC in this case. I think if bank cannot provide FIRC, I can give you answers about GST, but I cannot say how can you procure the FIRC. Whether you can take the refund or not is again a different matter. If you have received in INR, it will become difficult, very difficult. I think this, what you mean to say is there is a branch of the foreign party in India, and that foreign party's Indian branch has given you payment in INR, but you have billed to the foreign HO, that which is outside India. I think this is the case which had happened in your scenario, but it is export of services, so amount has to be received in convertible foreign currency, and if it is not received, so you are not eligible. It is not export only. In fact, you will have to pay GST on the supply also. Refund is a different matter.
Yeah, this issue we have faced in other cases also, and but there again the link will have to be proved that ultimately this amount which has come is as per the FEMA regulations as a foreign convertible exchange, a convertible foreign exchange. Only if it qualifies as a convertible foreign exchange under FEMA, then only you may be able to claim the benefit of export of services. And then for claiming a refund, FIRC is mandatory, because that is mentioned in the rules that this is that the FIRC is mandatory. So claiming a refund in such cases against LUT will be is going to be.
No, it is not against LUT. It is again with payment of tax.
Again with payment is it is okay. This is again with on payment of tax. Yeah. So so the point remains that you need to prove through the FEMA regulations that this amount has been received in convertible foreign exchange. Try to obtain certification from your bankers by quoting the relevant regulations of FEMA. I think that is the only thing which can be done. We had seen it practically in other case where even ICICI Bank was reluctant to give a certificate of FIRC. And ultimately, only with the reference to the respective rules of FEMA, they mentioned that with reference to these rules, these payments have been made. That is at the most that they could give in one or two of our cases. So it is actually difficult first to prove that this is a export. Yeah. So we need to see the relevant documents which can be obtained in case of such cases.
I think that was the last question. Another is just, would you appreciate if you share today's presentation? So I think the presentation will be put on our website, apmh.in, and I think it can be viewed from there anytime, maybe in the future.
Yeah, from there it can be taken, or we'll do one thing. We will mail it to all the participants who have registered. We will mail the presentation. Yeah, in the PDF format. We will mail that.
Yes. Okay.
Fine. Okay. So thank you everybody. Thank you Harshit for very well explaining all the provisions of refund in case of export of goods and services. It's a very complicated topic. It appears to be very simple, but there are very various intricacies which are involved in this, and Harshit has done it in a masterly way. Thank you everyone for participating. Over to you, Mitesh, for your feedback and comments.
Thank you everyone. I know it was a long session, but it calls for a lot of detailing and explanation all the while. And I think a lot of participants' interaction was also very good. A lot of questions came up. They were very genuine questions, and we also tried to address it to the best of our knowledge. Both Pranabhai and Harshit addressed all the required questions. Further to this, I am putting our email ID on the chat box. Harshit, you can also put up on the screen the email ID of your presentation. It is harshit@apmh.in as well as pranav@apmh.in. Both email IDs you can write to either of them, and get more clarity on your issues as and when you come across, and we'll be happy to help and assist you. We also intend to put up this video very soon after cleaning it up and doing all sorts of what you call interpretations and clear video. We'll upload it on our YouTube channel, which is APMH YouTube channel. A lot of interactive webinars keep on happening, so we have uploaded almost all these videos. So you can of course use our archive videos for your reference, as well as you can see this video after it is uploaded on the YouTube channel. You can be participating in the YouTube channel by subscribing it on the YouTube, and you will get all the latest videos that come across from our research wing on GST and other technical aspects of the tax laws and corporate laws and accounting and so on. So feel free to be connected to us on the YouTube channel as well. With this, I would like to thank everyone.
Mitesh, one more thing. We are also planning one more such webinar in the first or second week of August. So in case any suggestions are there for the topics for the webinar, the participants can share with us. As we have of course identified the topic for the next seminar, which will be on issues relating to reverse charge mechanism, applicable for especially with respect to import of services, and other reverse charge mechanism applicable for local. That is one area wherein there are lots of difficulties which are faced by various dealers in discharging the duties, and claiming credit against that is one more important area, because that is what we have seen in many cases. Whether the credit will now be available if the reverse charge liability is paid after 2 years during the GST audit, if it is found out that anything is liable to be paid under reverse charge mechanism, and if it is paid today, whether the credit will be available thereof. So there are various interesting points with this regard, and that is the next thing that we are planning. So participants who want to enroll for the same, we will be sending the link for that. Yeah, Mitesh.
Yes. So thank you everyone for great participation. A lot of feedbacks have come on the chat box also. So thank you for your feedbacks, Deepak bhai, Jiten bhai, Shailesh bhai, Chandresh bhai, etc. And of course Ravindra ji. I have also posted our email IDs for your future reference, and we'll keep you posted about the upcoming events and upcoming news with respect to GST and direct taxes, corporate laws, etc. Thank you, Naveen ji. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe,
Yes,
stay healthy.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Bye.